trying to remember all the things.
Okay, let's go live.
Why is it like this? The haters should be loved, be invited. You don't agree, then you're the problem that we're fighting. Open up your mind, stand up, become right.
Hello.
Hi. I'm a bit nervous. I don't know why.
She's nervous because we're talking about a topic that you don't feel so clued up on or confident on.
Yeah. So if you haven't guessed by the title or any of the messages that we're putting out, this episode is about education. So
To school.
yeah, being going back to school. We've just had exam results coming out. The GCSE ones are about to come out. They've already been out.
I've not heard that they've come out yet.
The results are all, I know A
Yeah.
levels have, T levels, they've been introduced, they've got their
I
results.
think SATs came out as well.
SATs came out. And then we're starting a new year, which means some people are going to be starting a new school.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's some mature students that are going back to school after many years of the education game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stress that happens around this time of year.
Even teachers restarting term, you know, we've all come away from that kind of habit being in the classroom.
100%. It's not just students, it's the parents, it's the staff.
Parents as well, yeah.
There's so many people involved and it's such high pressure, very stressful. And if you're a part of a neurodiverse family, it can be insane. So we want to hold this episode so that we can talk about the general worries that people have around this time of year and education in general. There's homework, there's how much should my kid be following the rules when they maybe struggle with certain behavioural issues. And what kind of environment do you need for your kids, maybe to help you allow them to self-advocate, how you can help advocate for them. And you'll learn that any parent of a neurodivergent child that they're wanting to help, they suddenly become an expert.
Well, you have to become an expert on everything because you've got to fight your corner.
100%. If anyone's seen the neuroaffirming parent on Instagram, that page is amazing, and she'll be starting her own podcast soon, so we look forward to that.
Yeah, definitely.
But my position, I've been to university, having bipolar, ADHD, and I had the provisions and the help that I deserve, basically, going back to university as a mature student. And so that's my experience. But I think even more richer is your experience as a
tutor,
mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you should explain what you do. Do it.
Well, so many years ago, about 10 years or so ago, I decided that waitressing wasn't for me anymore, and landed headfirst in a career in specialist education, behavioural education. And I worked across a number of different schools, some alternative, some mainstream, a number of different roles, did loads of different training, realised I was hella good at it, but not so good at conforming. And let's put it this way, it was like going back to school as the different kid, and I just didn't fit in, kind of thing, with the head teachers, because I'm a rebel. So I like to see results, and I like to do things in a way that I think makes sense, rather than in a way that's because that's how it should be done. So
I love that.
Yeah, that didn't bode well for my career.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so I decided that I was going to just start my own tutoring business, and then it just went from there. So yeah, like I think it was 2016 I launched that. It was first called Lack Bespoke Tutoring.
Where did you get that name from? Lack Bespoke.
LAKH. LAH are my initials. But then there was a word, I think it was something to do with Indian or Sikh or something, but lack meant lots. I liked the whole the LACK version of lack. You're lacking something. So there was a lot of like wordplay in it for me with like this bespoke tutor. And then I changed it to the Windstar Way to incorporate Winnie, who you know that I hold that name dear. And Windstar Way was just about it being more fun, because I very quickly realised as a tutor, my biggest success was I make kids laugh and then they learn. So it was like I was bringing that to the table when it came to learning, was like, how can we make this fun? And then that makes it engaging. And also stripping away a lot of the so one of the things that I want to talk about is the fact that a lot of the stuff that we teach in classrooms is purely to pass an exam. There's no other reason for it.
Right.
So when I tutor, I go in and I tutor on the skills that are going to be really helpful for life and why they're going to be, I'll explain why they're helpful. And, you know, like reading in general, of course, reading is very, very helpful because then you can research anything that you want. You can teach yourself anything. So I will explain that. But then obviously when they have to learn the difference between an adjective, a noun, a verb, an adverb, a preposition, the difference between a complex sentence and a compound sentence and a simple sentence, and they have to know the difference between these at age 10. So when it's that, I will.
How many of us know that?
What? Who needs to know that unless you become a primary school teacher? So I just level with them and I'll say, right, shall we get down to the business of learning this stuff to get you through this exam?
So be honest with them.
Yeah.
The kids, they can see straight through you, especially like, what age do you teach?
Well, officially, so I work at an alternative provision and support kids that are around about 13 to 16, right. Majority of them.
So literally ages that can see straight through you.
Oh, exactly. Like these teenagers are absolutely wicked. But if you walk in and try and be anything other than, you know, straight and... Yeah. They know these days more than ever.
Hungry wolves.
Yeah, definitely. Like feed them to the lions. But that's exactly why these kids that I'm supporting in this alternative provision haven't made it in mainstream, because they dare to question the authority.
Exactly, and that's a common trait, isn't it?
Yeah.
Neurodivergent kids, they ask these questions, which, let's be honest,
irrelevant questions.
It's a trait in adults as well. Fully developed adults, we respect for questioning things and going outside of the box and not following authority. You know, the term "don't jump off the bridge just because everyone else did."
Yeah.
But somehow we expect it. Yeah, it's very
expected
contradictory.
To follow those rules. Yeah, and this is the thing. It's like, for me, I ended up forging a whole career that allows me to support these kids in a way that I feel like they needed it. I tried to be in restrictive school environments where it was very much, if something worked, then there'd be a lot of praise, but not towards you, it'd be towards, you know, the school on the whole, or SLT, the senior leadership team, because it worked. And then if something went wrong, guess who were in the firing line for it going wrong? So you never got praised for what you did, and you got blamed.
Yeah.
Not even just when it went wrong and it was your fault. One of the things I used to joke about in schools was, if something started to go wrong, you could almost see people getting their finger out of their pocket, their well-trained pointy finger, and starting to look for somebody to blame.
Right.
And that is such a toxic culture to work in.
Yeah.
Because you are terrified that even if you absolutely walk the line and follow all the rules, ridiculous rules anyway, even if you do all of that, you're still potentially going to get blamed if something goes wrong, and shamed as well. The level of shame, it's just like, you just think, let's stick together, guys. You know,
right.
We're all in it for the same thing, which is the greater good of the kids, surely. But safeguarding is great, but don't get me wrong, it's all gone a bit wild as well.
In what sense?
Just in the sense that, like, say if the staff members really wanted to, they could say that it's inappropriate for me to put my arm around a kid or something like that. But these kids need a different kind of approach, because some of them haven't got any nurture at home. And you've got to trust as a professional that I'm not doing that because I'm a pervert or because I've got another horrible reason for it.
Right.
And there's very much like a lack of trust in professional judgment. So you can't approach an individual student on an individual basis and make an individual choice, because everything has to follow like guidelines and rules and you know, and it's all to safeguard.
It's hard, it's for children, and I understand that side, but also coming from a place where you need that connection, that specific type of connection in order for them to trust you and then learn.
Even swearing, of course, you shouldn't swear when the young people are around, but they come from environments where swearing is very normal.
Right, yeah.
For me, swearing's pretty normal. So if I drop or let the odd swear word slip, that gets under their skin in the sense that they're like, oh, she's pretty sound, she's pretty normal. And in the grand scheme of things, what it does is it allows them to engage with me. Suddenly they want to be in my classroom. They're choosing to come to my lessons.
You're being authentic.
But if you wanted to really be particular about it, I'd lose my job for swearing in a classroom. Literally lose my job. So you just think, you know, it's such a shame that unfortunately that level of trust of being a human, we employ a lot of teachers are there because they genuinely want to change these kids' worlds, they want to change lives, and they're drawn to this kind of level of work, and then they're not trusted to come up with creative solutions and to find answers that are going to, even like, for example, this can happen in mainstream. Your kids can turn up and there's been a row at home just before they've left the door, and they've turned up and they're tearful, or they've not had breakfast, or for any reason
their environment isn't conductive for starting the day and learning.
Just it might be a one-off, but they're out of sorts. They're out of sorts. But there's nowhere really, even in special education, you still have to answer to paperwork if you move away from the plan. So if the plan was to do maths at that time, you've got to stick to the plan no matter what. And if you don't, you've got to justify it. And you just think, what is more important, really? You know,
right, yeah.
The mental health of these kids and knowing that they're ready to learn and ready to develop and ready to absorb. And, or just everybody acting like robots, that it's like, well, when you go to work, you'll have to fix up. I'm not sure you will, actually, because if I went to work crying, the compassion of the team around me would probably check in and be like, you all right, have a little cup of tea before you start your class. They would be like, you need to get on with it. So I don't know. It's just very unrealistic what schools are putting out there. But on that note, if you're a parent, this is where I want to say, try not to stress too much. I mean, how did you do in your exams? Did you do well? Did you do as well as expected?
I hated exams. Classic
coursework kind of gal.
Because in terms of being able to just work at it at my own pace, coursework was amazing for me.
Yeah,
so I picked a lot of art classes, stuff like that allowed me to not have to be put on the spot on that day. But obviously you can't avoid that in GCSEs sort of thing. You have to be put into these certain things. So I hated them, and I learnt several tricks about how to study. I didn't actually learn the theoretical way. I would find past papers and completely rewrite them, and thus learning the topic on my own. Or I would just figure out a way of cheating that would allow me to get ahead. Or I'd learn how
to answer the question to get the points.
If I needed to get 70% pass to be able to get a C, and that was what I needed for my future, I would learn exactly that. And and I wouldn't practice any more than that, and I'd keep it to that. And I'd take advantage of getting points for working out and stuff like that, and for making notes on the paper and stuff like that. So I did actually, when it came to exams, really well. But it came
to play the system.
Yeah. And
you didn't actually develop from it.
Yeah, it's really, the best way that I can explain it, a good example is, and this is as young as primary school, is learning times tables. On a Friday, we used to have, shout out anyone that went to Cossington Primary School, if you listen to anyone I went to school with, we used to have these mental math, and it was just a little sheet of paper that they passed out to everyone. It was exactly the same every week because it was the same printout, and it was just not in obvious order, just random 1 to 12 times tables.
Yeah.
And I would quickly write out my 5s, 10s, and my 2s. The rest I would learn. I would just memorize, and every week I would get better because I'd memorize what number went in what place.
Oh wow, yeah. Rather than
To this day, I am terrible at maths, and that's because I learned certain things. Like,
can we just say about maths? Because I'm sure we had this conversation with Taz's amazing brother, who's a maths teacher.
Yes,
Alex. Shout out. But I'm sure we had this conversation with him, but maybe I just said it to him, I'm not sure. That as a mathematician, it's very sad that you could go for a maths paper and write the correct answers for every single question.
Yeah.
And fail. or get less marks than
100%.
Steph going through, writing all the working out, but getting the wrong answer.
Yeah.
But getting 2 or 3 marks per question for the working out.
It'd be enough to get you that C.
Well, you'd get more than the mathematician that got them all correct.
Right, okay, yeah.
You could, because some questions, for example, you get 5 marks. 1 for the correct answer, 4 for the working out. So if I just wrote the correct answer in all of them, I'd get so many marks. Whereas if you went through and showed the working out, you'd get more than me for the wrong answers.
And that working out wasn't working out. I'd write anything. Like, oh, there's a 22 there and a 1,000.
No, what's it? Yeah,
I'd just be like that, and just be like, anyone reading that would be like, oh, we've got to give her that.
No.
I'd feel very strange about it, I'm sure.
This is exactly what is wrong with the system, because every good teacher knows how to teach the kids to pass an exam.
Yes.
Even me as a tutor, I go in at home tutoring at about the age 8, 9, 10, when they start to show those signs of like kind of they're not keeping up in class. Usually they've got every good intention, they're good little workers, but you know, for whatever reason they're distracted in class or just need it explaining a couple more times to get it. Obviously classes move on too quick. It's like not the teacher's fault, this is curriculum for you. And yeah, I teach the kids just how to pass these exams, not necessarily. I do also make it really clear, and these are brilliant skills for life.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
these you can forget about once you've passed.
You know, when I think back to like, and I think a really key thing for learning is getting a teacher that you really like. And I know that's not always possible. You can't pick your teachers necessarily.
Yeah,
but it's well known that if you really got on with your teacher and you really liked your teacher, you learned from them. And it's about that, it just shows that connection.
And we're losing really so many good teachers, you know, like
they're under so much stress, they're not being appreciated.
It's in crisis. The statistics at the minute are absolutely horrific. So we've got like record numbers of new teachers leaving, record numbers of teachers leaving. The statistics in terms of the percentage of teachers that feel very, very anxious and very, very depressed and very, you know, very, very stressed.
Burnout being experienced.
It's about like 80-90%. Yeah. It's, you know, there's
a reason these strikes happen. They don't want to make your child suffer and not get the grades that they want.
This is a good point. I want the kids to strike. Let's everyone strike. We should be in it together. It's not the teachers versus the parents and the kids. We need to shut this curriculum down. No more curriculum, no more exams. Yes, let's learn how to read and do, you know, let's play shops and learn how to actually
100%.
live. But I agree that schooling is fantastic if it's actually got best intentions at heart, which it's not.
Expecting these neurotypical ways to fit every box and for every student to benefit. I mean, you're looking at like 40% of students here that are not being catered to. They're not given the environment that if they were, they'd be thriving.
The thing is as well, I did a lot of training in dyslexia and phonics training. So phonics is like, did you learn a, b, k?
No.
And so when I learned the phonics system, it is fantastic. It's like all I hear
is parents hate it.
Yeah, and I think it's because we don't understand it. Right. Because so this is where I want to break down a little bit of stigma, because I have been working on some sheets actually, so I'll have to get my butt into gear and get them published. It's like a system, phonics is. Once you learn what sound makes what, you literally just put them together like building blocks to make new words.
Right, yeah.
So it's like the reason that phonics was switched to is because it's got a much higher success rating across the board, regardless of how you're wired.
Right, yeah.
The trouble is, all classes just move on too quick. It's like they expect every kid to learn in exactly the same way, at the same pace, even though they're different ages, got different interests, different abilities. It's just absolutely bizarre. The whole thing is just bizarre. Because when we talk about even the difference between it works for neurotypicals, it doesn't work for them. What it is they can perform.
They can,
neurotypicals can perform in the expected way. They're still bloody suppressed and sad and depressed, like, you know, thinking, what is life? Somebody help me. But they just coped better in school kind of thing. And to be honest, the kids that I'm getting through with the alternative, which, can I just say, that currently what they're trying to do in the system is make alternative schools like schools. Well, the whole point is...
explain what the problem is there.
Because an alternative school or an alternative provision gives us much more flexibility. So we can design a timetable that specifically suits them. So if they get work better in the mornings, they can have the afternoons off maybe, or I mean, this would all be structured. It's not
And
like
this
maybe
is all
is
an individual's care plan rather than as a group. Okay.
Yeah, but I would still have a class. I'd know who was coming in when, and and I'd be in charge of knowing. Like, you'd make the timetable work, that you'd be doing something in the morning with that kid, then that kid's going to join, and you're going to do that. And it works either way as well. Like, we don't start till a bit later, lessons are slightly shorter.
And does any kid complain that one kid's coming in later, or do you ever get that?
No, I mean...
I feel like that's something that people would bring up, like, oh, you're going to get kids getting jealous.
Well, the thing is, this is, we have to have alternative because we've got mainstream. I've not scrapped the lot in terms of start times and all sorts of things like that should be kind of staggered. It'd be, say if we were talking about a new schooling system, you would just have it that you can turn up between 8 and 10. Because let's face it, we don't live in a world anymore where you have to work from 9 till 5.
Yeah.
I don't, because it doesn't suit me.
Definitely.
Like, it took me years to work out that that's why I'd waitress for so many years, because I like the fact it was shift work. Definitely. And talk to these kids, there's night shift patterns, there's so many ways of working now that, so what if they don't function well in the morning?
The idea at the UK is very structured in the times that we go to school and work, necessarily, not necessarily work I suppose, but school. And it's not the same even across Europe. I know, like, if you go to Spain, a lot of them in the summer months will end school midday.
Yeah.
But they'll have to go to school for a little bit on Saturday or on Sunday or whatever. And it's that understanding that these kids can't cope in this heat.
Yeah.
But when we have hot days here when kids are struggling, well, schools are kept open. They're expected to be acting normal. And even if they can suppress it all day, this like masking, as soon as they get home, parents, I'm sure, if you're watching this, you're met with a tornado of a child.
Yeah.
Because they've not been able to just feel nurtured and thrived in their environment all day.
I mean, the funny thing is, if I had to go and sit through a day's worth of school, I would, hate it. I challenge any adult to, only because...
You know what? I'd love that experience.
Yeah, but the reason I'd hate it as well...
I almost thought that I'd like it, because you could go back with all this new knowledge and just be like, yeah. But... yeah, would I? I'm forgetting how much of school...
Every time you went to speak, they'd be like, Stephanie, no, this isn't talking time. Eyes to the front, listening ears on. So you wouldn't be allowed an opinion anyway. That nobody likes to know it all. All these things are designed to make us be like, oh, better pipe down, better not have an opinion, better not...
Do you know what it is? I got diagnosed with ADHD after I left school, after I got kicked out of school. So the idea of going back and being like, see,
yeah, there was something different.
I'm all right.
See, I went...
You didn't notice this.
My school experience was I went from the genius kid that everyone was like, oh my God, wow, this kid is brainy. Even to the point where when we moved from Leicester to a village, and they put me in the year above, they got my birth date wrong. And I buzzed it in the year above. I'd only just learned the alphabet, right? But they called my mum in and they went, does Lindsay have problems with reading and writing? And my mum was like, reading and writing? She's only just learned the alphabet. And they were like, oh, what's the date of birth again? And mum told them. And they went, oh, that's all right then. And they'd got me in the wrong year.
Oh, my word.
But I'd managed to, mask that and, snake my way through. And they'd only just started to obviously notice 6 or 8 weeks in.
Oh, my God.
But I remember, weirdly enough, I've got these memories from it. And I remember one of them was I was begging this girl to show me, there was a giraffe and there was all these numbers around this giraffe, and I coloured the giraffe in beautifully because I didn't know what else to do.
Aww.
But I was begging this girl to show me her work, and she obviously didn't want to because she didn't want to cheat or whatever. And I remember this teacher just popping up out of the bookshelf, in between the bookshelves, and going, aha! I knew you'd been cheating or something. And I remember it because of the shame. I was one of them kids that wanted to do well, I loved learning. I was a real, kind of bright spark. And, so it was my mum said I was coming home from school every day going, I don't know anything, and she's like, well, it's because she was thinking, God, she never has ever struggled, but maybe it is just because it's just such a massive change from one school to another. But no, it was all right. It was all right. They just had me in the wrong year group.
Oh my God, just giving you a little bit of self-doubt at an early age, as early as possible.
I know, to be honest,
You're not good enough.
There was a bit of a turning point then, because I think I lost trust in the whole, like, these teachers don't know anything, like, I don't know. But
I know what you mean.
in general, I was always recognised as being really smart, but then I never ever got the grades that they expected ever in any exam, and nobody noticed.
So
Nobody
we're the
thought
opposite. All year I'd be like expected D's, expected low grades, and then it came to the exam and I'd C or above.
Well, I'd always, I got really good grades, but I was expected to get A stars.
Right.
And it was like, how she only got a B? You know what I mean? You was meant to have got an A star. And for me in English, my passionate subject, and I'd managed to get a B when I was like, you know, my whole English career, I'd been expected to be an A star student.
Isn't that weird then? We were getting similar grades, but you were told you weren't getting them high enough. Yours weren't high enough, and I was told that mine. Well, it was evident that mine were miles above what I was doing at school. So it's like, what do you want?
No, that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, it doesn't matter what you try and do, because. But anyway, this is the point. Parents, don't stress about results, because these exam results didn't matter. What mattered was core values, core work ethic, getting my butt out there and getting some life experience, and, you know, doing what I had to do to move forward.
Definitely. And there's so many other options as well. I know plenty of people that did terribly in A-levels, and they all went to university. When it comes to clearing, there's so much space. If you can actually work at it, or again, try again for next year, don't let it define you. Don't let it, you know, call yourself a loser or think that your kid's done anything wrong or not tried hard enough. Also, try not to tell them, don't worry about it when they've got their results that they weren't expecting, because obviously there's been a lot of pressure for years now put onto these exams, and not getting the result that they were looking for and telling them not to worry about it is a little bit not considering how their emotions are going to be. So, you know, hold that space for them. I'm sorry that you didn't get the grades that you wanted, but this isn't the end of the world. It doesn't define you. What's the next plan?
Even, I think there's a lot of pressure to kind of know what you want to do at that young age. Can I just shout out the chat, by the way? I'm loving the comments as well. I'm like, yeah, have you?
I can't see them. They're too far away.
We've got, is Jam Graham James?
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Hey, dude. It's saying about schooling that it doesn't support creativity, entrepreneurialism, or forward growth of scientific ideas. And this is the thing. Schools could be this hotbed of new growth 100%. And innovative ideas. Like, it makes me think of, like, the ancient Greeks when they're like, you know, they were just lying around philosophizing about things. Like, but this is what schools should, like, the schools could just be like. And if they didn't follow a curriculum across the UK, you would have all these hot pots of new ideas that then they could kind of switch ideas rather than going, no, we've all got to follow the same thing. Yeah. Like, you'd have new perspectives. You'd have people that were on the coast coming up with different perspectives to people that are in inland, and people on the coast have got different economic issues, so they could, like, literally focus on those things. It's just, it just is so incredibly frustrating. And then also Lou saying that learning should be fun and not just about box ticking. And I think 100%. Do you know the thing? You know, like, if I'm tutoring and the kid's laughing, quite a lot of the parents find that uncomfortable. You know, they're a bit like, "Oh, you sounded like you're having fun." Like, as though learning should be fun. Yeah, and it's like, and the thing is, it's like, well, a lot of kids are scared of failure. That is a massive reason why they kick off. And, you know, like, if you've got a classroom with a teenager in it and they start kicking off, you know, the chances that they can't actually read what's on the board, or that they can't process what's being asked of them, and that's why they're kicking off, because we
see the anger, but anger is never the first emotion. Why are they angry? Why are they angry?
Frustrated?
They're frustrated because they can't do exactly what they're being expected of them. And what's being expected of them,
they don't even want to do.
Natural, you know, necessarily something that you'll use in the future anyway. It's very annoying. There's things that we tell kids to, you know, sit down, shut up, be quiet, fingers on lips. And did you get that? Fingers on lip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this across the world? Does everyone remember this?
The thing is as well, it's like the good listening things that we teach.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong, setting an expectation with any child of what good listening looks like for them is a really good idea. But bear in mind that good listening isn't this. It's horrible. That's horrible.
Yeah.
Like, if you make me stare at you, I can't listen. So
It's a bit much.
yeah. So please establish what, because on the good listening cards, it's like eye contact, eyes ahead, like eyes looking at me. Well,
Yeah.
when I'm really intently listening, I'll look just past you. Because I'm so intently listening to what you're saying, I have to look elsewhere.
Yeah. Good eye contact doesn't equate to good listening.
No, it
Good
doesn't.
listening.
Active listening, yeah. And it's just about kind of establishing, because it obviously in schools,
Yeah.
this is what good listening looks like. Well, no, it isn't. And then if you're the person that isn't what good listening looks like, then you're labelled as different and shunted off out of the main class.
Don't get us wrong. There's going to be kids that are like,
yeah,
that just aren't listening.
yeah,
because
and that
they
need
just-
a bit of direction.
whatever that is. You know, there's always going to be that. There's some people that are just having a bad day and they're being rude, but it's not the every case, so you can't generalize.
It's like as well. The other thing is a lot of it's boring. Yeah, it actually is. The curriculum is so boring.
Do you
It's
know what's also
unbelievable.
Work. Even doing something that you really enjoy, this idea that if you have a job that you really enjoy, then you'll never work a day in your life,
Yeah.
is not fair. It's not true.
No, it's
Do
not.
not fall for it.
We work every minute that we have because we
Doing
love
this.
doing it. Yeah.
Would I rather be on a beach doing nothing?
Yes.
Si. Si, senor.
No, this is where we go and we're live on a beach.
Wait,
Damn
damn a
it.
green screen. I can't figure this out live, but I would like to.
Yeah, that would be cool. We'll just be on a beach like,
Oh wait, there is that beach stuff.
But just going back, because obviously, like you say, the boredom in the classroom can prepare you for boredom at work. But this boredom in the classroom is designed to switch you off from having any curiosity about anything. The curriculum is boring in the sense that we could cover so much stuff,
Yeah.
but it locks you into, they've got to know about this piece of history. Since I've got older, I can't believe how much history there is in the world.
And how
Because
interesting it is when it's put to you in a format that you actually can digest.
school had me believing that I knew everything. And that's the point of it. It's like, it makes you believe that you know the timeline, that you understand the perspective, that you
Especially
you
with like the Anglo-Saxon, like what you're portrayed as, like this idea. You go through school
Yeah.
being like, we were kings and queens and cool people, and you realise we were all
savages, like
Oh
yeah.
my word! And then we
Yeah.
spread it across. We just travelled and ruined with it. So embarrassing to be part of this,
Yeah.
like ex-British con.
That is the word, the embarrassment of being associated with something that's so ignorant and so narrow-minded and short-sighted. It's just like, oh God, will the
Definitely.
shame ever leave us?
But that was my point on having a teacher that it interested you, because you'd listen, and these teachers were always the ones that went outside the box to teach you something. I always remember, and he's never going to watch this, but he is. I'm going to manifest it. Mr. Elliot. He was an English teacher. I think he's still at
Which
Lindzi.
Lindzi? I remember Mr. Elliot. I didn't have him, but I had a lot of cool teachers at
Mr. Elliot was the teacher that, so a little bit like how you put in the wrong year, I was
Yeah.
put in the wrong class. From my grades the last year, they looked at my exam and was like, but how I was doing the whole year, they looked at more and put me in a very low, I think the bottom English set.
Oh my God, that happened to me when I went to Moorlands.
Really?
In the absolute bottom English set.
Yeah.
And they couldn't read. The kids couldn't. Like, it went round. Yeah, it went round in a circle, and they were reading out, but they were reading very stilted, like, and
The
that. And then when it got to me and I read, she looked up from her book and was like, yeah. And like took me out after her, and then that was the end of that.
literally three lessons in, I remember being like, I go into this class, it's horrible. Like, I do not enjoy this. And just one lesson, some teacher came and like knelt down in front of my table and was just like, Stephanie, we've realised that you might be a little more advanced for this class.
Oh.
Would you be open to going to a... And it was kind of like, but I've already had 3 lessons here. Like, I don't
Yeah.
like coming here, but I know who I'm sat next to now.
Yeah,
I'm kind of
yeah.
used to that. And I was taken into Mr. Elliot's classroom, and I'm not going to lie, I very much fancied him. That kind of helps. But on top of that, he was just interesting. He was funny. He did swear. He had banter with us.
Yeah.
You know, there was lessons.
There we go. Though he swore, like it just gets
Sometimes-
kids.
And he'd sit there and read Of Mice and Men, and he'd read Shakespeare. He'd read all these
Happy.
poetry, and he'd.
Can you believe we're still doing those books now?
Really?
No, but Of Mice and Men, they're still studying that now in GCSE. It's like, oh my god, is it ever going to change?
I love that book though, so I'm kind of like biased to it because I had such a good time with it, and I do feel like it can teach the certain morals within that.
I like Of Mice and Men, to be fair. It's the fact that I feel like Shakespeare shouldn't be. Like, it's really, really hard to put Shakespeare into history a little bit, you know, like learn about the history of literature.
Yeah.
And then bring some more modern books through so that it's not drying them out because it's so hard.
You can draw from Shakespeare.
I'm gonna say, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that all of it needs to go. It just
definitely it draws it. You know, you can pin it because just telling a kid, like, you know, imagine a kid from South London that's used to gangs. We're gonna learn about Shakespeare. He's gonna be like, and just switch off. If you start linking this to rap, say, hey, bring in your favourite lyrics, like what lyrics speak to you, what do they say? And you can see metaphors in these lyrics. You can see like deep emotion. You can see a story in a lot of these lyrics. And bring in your own stuff. Let's analyse your own stuff and teach you it that way.
Yeah, but this is the thing, innit? There's so much room in the classroom for this level of creativity and go with the flow, and you know, there'll be kids that want to stand up and perform, and there'll be kids that laugh at that and feel like, what the hell, and there'll be kids that are inspired by it and kids that are switched off by it, but
100%.
that scenario is not even happening. We're not even just providing a space just to allow these things to happen. But yeah, it's just like,
I feel like a common problem I see, to move the conversation on a bit, it's very much related, is homework.
Yes.
There is recordings of many parents saying that there is too much homework. And again, especially within the neurodiverse community, getting home after a long day of doing that, how do you attack homework? Do you have any advice for your kids? Do they have homework in your alternate provision?
No, not in the alternative provision. I mean, in terms of like, I'll set them tasks of try and keep your eye out for that thing for next lesson and stuff, but it's very
right.
And then I used to be a big advocate for homework, and I used to say to the young people, well, at the end of the day, you're going to have jobs that you've got to do outside of your work, and it's good to kind of have that practice at doing something that you don't want to do. So I do still stand by that, but I feel like homework should be much more like just do a creative project, because then the school could analyse what skills do they enjoy using, you know, what habits have they got, because I'll give you an example. I was around my friends, well, in fact it was Kat, you know, that we had on.
Shout out Kat.
And her son, shout out George, was writing a story, and he's like, Lindzi, can you read my story? And he's always writing one thing or the other. And then his mum's there going, you need to leave that now because you need to get on with your homework. And I've looked at what his homework was, and it was like write up like a, you know, one sheet information type thing about this dude. And it was just such a shame that he had to move away from the creative writing that he was doing anyway. And I know that the other thing required other skills, because it was like, you know, research, blah, blah, blah. But if that's the case, just do it as an open research task then. Yeah. So like one task is create something, and just leave it as that. And one task is, but yeah, so unfortunately, where we stand at the minute with homework being set, we're in a rock and a hard place, aren't we? Because parents have got this battle to do it. Teachers have got a battle to maintain it's got to be done. For me, reading is a really important skill, and I think you can provide opportunities for reading at home. So it doesn't have to be a storybook, but it also doesn't have to be them reading.
Yeah.
So one big thing is take it in turns when it comes to reading. Don't try and just force them to read, especially if they're not that good at it. It just makes it really just horrible for everybody. But then if you're not so good at reading, then straight away that's a great thing to think, well, how has that left me feeling? You know, what barriers has that given me? Because there is ways around not being able to read. But the other misconception, the big myth is, I'm dyslexic, I can't read. That is not true.
Yeah.
You know, it's
You
absolutely
just find
not
it
true.
harder to read.
That
there are
particular-
skills that you
yeah.
could definitely use.
Yeah, you can still teach yourself to read and be taught to read and learn to read, but it's just a different way of like taking that information in.
Definitely. And it
So-
might take a little bit longer than
So for me, reading, never ever give up on that task, because reading can take you anywhere.
you're a
Because
big advocate for reading.
purely because if you want to find out about how to rewire something on your engine of your car, you can like type in, how do I rewire? Like, but I mean, to be honest, you've got voice things that you can ask, and that is absolutely fantastic. But I'm just saying that I feel like there's a lot of the families in particular that I support, not my families that are going privately, but in the alternative provisions,
Yeah.
they are coming from a lot more of a very, very low working class background. Okay, so they're like already really like, you know,
Right,
on the
okay.
poverty line, below the poverty line, working class, that kind of like, that's where they are in terms of class and society. And those environments, those estates and those families and those households are quite quick, the older ones as well, to go, well, you don't need to read, you'll be fine. But the trouble is you're weakening your position. All we're doing is
Definitely.
by uneducating our ability to educate ourselves, it's like we're in less of a position to be able to make an informed choice. You're much more vulnerable if you can't read.
We're already the type of person to question authority, so the idea that they'd want to stop us from learning to read, not to get into conspiracy theories, but it wouldn't be that far off.
This is the thing. It's like, for me, invest in learning to read, because it's one tool that you will be able to, you know, take with you, kind of thing. And unfortunately, a lot of my lads will be like, yeah, well, F reading, you know, and I'm like, yeah, fine. You ain't got to lay in night, fed at night reading a novel. That's not why I'm telling you to read.
Yeah. Read social media, read magazines.
Exactly. Social, like, post whatever. But their mums and their dads are also saying to them, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So this is my shout out to you. Please do worry about it, because the way that we're going and the way that the world's going, this class is the class that's the most vulnerable as it is. And if we can't read and be reading what we're signing and reading emails that are being sent and letters that are being sent, then I'm sorry, but we're going to be pretty helpless.
100%. And if you have kids that for whatever reason, disabilities don't allow them to do these certain things, they need extra help, then even more, like, you understand being an advocate for them. And that means, like, you know, getting these skills yourself if you're going to be advocating for them.
Reach out to us personally, you know, if there is people out there that are thinking, I can't read and I want to learn. I've taught adults to read. I've been to gypsy camps and taught in caravans, like, adults to read. Honestly, like, I've been everywhere teaching people to read, and there isn't anybody I can't teach.
There you go. Shout out, contact us on
like
Instagram.
Only because I'd hate for somebody to thinking, but I can't because I'm dyslexic, or I can't because whatever. It's like, you can and you will.
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued to know if you're watching this and you can read or not. It's very strange, isn't it? When you've got a video format, you kind of assume when you're talking about something, or say I was to bring something on screen and not read it out,
you just
assume someone's reading it. It's all these little things, isn't it?
The other thing is, I can't remember what the specific percentage is, but in prisons, the percentage of the inmates that have got a reading age of 10 or below is massive. It's massively high. So it just shows that there's a massive link between confidence, self-worth, success, being able to get a job, and reading, and then not being able to do these things and turn into crime.
Definitely.
So it's like,
if you go to, like, there's prisons in Sweden that, like, really look at restorative justice and rehabilitation, and a lot of them can get university degrees. There's like open living, and again, the amount of rate that they return to prison is minute. It's almost not there. So because you're allowing them to develop these skills that they can thrive in the outside. If you're just taking, you know, making them feel like they're useless and not giving them any challenges and not helping them develop, and then you send them back out in a worse state than what they came in. For however long they've been in, the longer even more the situation's going to be hard, because they don't understand the outside life. life's changed. Even over a few months, we know if you can just look at the news, stuff changes really fast. So it just can feel a bit jolting.
Yeah, definitely. Just going back to the homework stuff as well, though.
Just sit on schools rather than prisons.
Well, and also, I'm like, if you were a parent listening, I'm aware that I probably gave like half a tip and then moved on to something else. It's trying to have that laugh, have that giggle with them. Try and not be parent versus student. Try and be on the side with them, where it's like, look, I get it, homework's boring, it's rubbish. Instead of being like hiding behind the thing of, oh, it's great, like, you know just be like, look, let's compromise. How much do you reckon we can get away with doing that's going to keep lovely Miss Honey happy, but it's also going to mean that you've not got to spend all night on it, because I get it. And try and just, take a chill pill a little bit on it, I suppose, because we all know that the result of school doesn't define us.
Definitely.
But the result of how school makes us feel
100%.
So it's like,
stay with you forever.
Yeah, so please don't also add to that pressure at home. It's horrible enough out there as it is. Like, let's all stick together. And it's like, if that means doing half their own work for them now and again, just do it.
Definitely.
But the reading, having a giggle, like, I'll say to them, like, especially my reluctant readers, I'll go, I tell you what then, I'll read 2 pages to your 1 page. And because they think they're getting one over on you, they're like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, all right, then.
And then before you know it, they've still read 10 pages, because I can read 2 pages pretty quick. So, and I'll put on the voices and stuff, because then you're modelling how to read it.
Exactly.
So, yeah, there's like a few different ways you can encourage it, but I think it's removing that, you've got to do this.
Yeah, I think a good, especially for ADHD, making a game out of stuff.
Yeah.
Always makes stuff easier
spelling
to do.
Games, I've got a lot of spelling games.
Way more interesting.
So,
and again, for older years, if you're going to university, there's so many options that you can go and get assessed for educational diagnoses. If you're waiting too long for a medical diagnosis, even on top of that, you want to make sure that you're getting everything that your university or your college can offer you. So if that's disability support, you can get certain funding. There's a certain amount of money that you can get put into your account. There is funding for technology that might be able to help you, whether that's like a laptop to help you actually type things because you struggle to write notes or whatever. Audio devices. There's so much that you can claim basically under these schemes. Yeah, definitely. Another thing I would say is all of these, if you're going through that process, is to document everything, get everything in writing. And this again goes to parents that are advocating for their children. If you're trying to get something done, if you're trying to get your child assessed through the educational system, then make sure everything they tell you tell them what you are getting from this school. There'll be a care plan that says what your child needs, and then find out what your school can provide. Get that in writing. If you deserve more than that, I'm pretty sure there is a claim that you can do.
Yeah, well,
and it will get that.
It will depend what area and council you're in and stuff like that, but there will be avenues. But that, get it in writing is definitely the key. If they're saying they'll do something, get that in writing, and you can
everything in writing.
You can do that by sending them an email and saying, further to our discussion earlier where this was stated, and list everything that they've put, and engage them into that conversation kind of thing, so that it becomes a digital conversation that's keeping a log of what conversation is going on.
Keep them accountable, because sometimes it might be a case that you've got a lot of kids at the school and it's hard to keep track of one that you're supposed to do certain things for. And then sometimes you might just have the case that you've got teachers that are neglectful or don't know what they're doing. Unfortunately, that's got to be the minority, I'm sure. I'm hopeful. But yeah, just the advocate, in terms to be able to advocate, you want to make sure that you are documenting everything and research as much as you can about what your child needs, and make sure they get it because they deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, the tricky thing is, every single parent that I know that's kid needs additional support are currently right now still battling for it. I've been battling for it the whole time. I mean, as you know, I'm not a fan of the system whatsoever. I think it's completely corrupt, and I think it's just all a big guise. I don't think any of it works. So it's hard to sit here and kind of go, oh yeah, and just follow the avenues and blah, 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 because they're not going to get you anywhere for at least 5 years. But the main thing is kind of sticking together and being a community about it. And for me, I'm like, how do we revolutionise education? It needs to stop. These exams, we've spoke about the exams now, they're useless. We've spoke about the fact that everything that we're learning within school, we can all as adults reflect on and say, was any of that actually worth it? You know,
I know what a hypotenuse is, and I use that every day.
What? What's that?
It's a hypotenuse. Isn't it the longest side of a triangle?
God knows. Wow. I mean, that's just blown my mind. But this is the thing, it's like, there's obvious things in the maths that are really helpful, like telling the time, being able to like work out if you know, if you've got enough money and budget and stuff like that.
Key skills that will actually set you up for life. Teaching kids about tax, because it's inevitable. Teaching that, you know, you can teach fractions and percentages easily by teaching people about tax. And bank accounts and all these things that they will actually use. Why are we learning? I do love of mice and men, but why are we learning of?
And then why are we learning that? And then coming out of school and being like, whoa, this is like a massive slap in the face, because I had no idea this is what real life was like, because everybody pretended it wasn't. Because
it was a bad example, because Steinbeck gets life pretty well.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I quite rate it, mice and men. But the other shout out there is to teachers, and to stay strong, because we need you more than ever right now.
You are fundamental. We need you for our kids to thrive.
And teachers, talk to the parents. Let's arrange a massive strike where kids just don't go to school. We'll set up community groups. I'll volunteer to look after a load in my area. Like, I'll play games with them, whatever. But let's make the government listen that we have had enough. Like, this school thing could be amazing. We could be creating 100%. Such wonderful people for society, but instead we're just adding to the prison system, adding to the mental health epidemic, and
draining resources that just...
And dividing people further until what? Until we've got no power left whatsoever. So the time is now.
The time is now. It's
the time is. The time is actually.
It's actually time to say goodbye. I feel like we've ranted off enough.
I've
also not covered anything that I wanted to, and I feel like, no, but that's just a common theme I'm realising. We've got, like, I'll have a list of things that I want to talk about, and the time goes like that.
Do you know, like, you look like a proper cool newsreader or something, and then like I'm sat here like next to you looking like I've come straight off a building site.
Hello.
Oh my god, Anchor Woman. Like, that just doesn't look right at all, but that looked great.
Coming to you live at a different podcast studios. Today we have been talking about education and your child's needs. Are they getting them? Are you advocating for them? Let's start the revolution. Be there.
That was great.
I just like went in another dimension then.
I genuinely look like the prison person sat next to you. So it's like you're interviewing a product of the system. Like so.
So you're facing 10 years. How do you feel?
Frustrated.
And do you have any final words before your life is taken in behind those bars?
I can't wait to study in an environment that supports me. That's the thing, like, prison system does a lot of ADHDers end up doing really well, you know, because it's structured. And
hasn't there been an uprising in people, again we'll get into the criminal system, but isn't there been an uprising in police officers doing an ADHD assessment before they're actually determining how they're dealt with?
It was because they're meant to take it into account if you're going into custody and stuff like that, but it was in London. They were doing screenings to work out how many of their return like offenders and stuff like that were ADHD, which is really good, because then you can actually look at why they're returning criminals in a different way. But recently, I was talking to a friend that's been in the criminal system, and he was spoken to about attachment disorder by the by the psychologist there, which I thought was actually quite cool. Brilliant. It was like, I was really impressed at that. But then I was interested that the things that she'd spoke to him about were such indicators of ADHD, and yet that hadn't been mentioned. So it was great, and it was frustrating at the same time, yeah. Because it was like, it's just fab that they are obviously noted, because that's what she said. She said, well, you've been back for the same type of offence, and that indicates emotional 100%. Difficulties and this, that and the other. And I was like, it does, but the thing that connects all of those things is your ADHD. Like, so
there was a post recently, I can't remember if it was a TikTok or an Instagram, and it was of a guy saying that he'd just been pulled over by the police for something. Oh, his car MOT hadn't fully, whatever, the dates hadn't fully lined up. He hadn't. And as he was pulled, he was like, I'm really sorry, I have ADHD. And the person that normally helps me with all my bills and stuff is my sister. And we've fallen out. I've not spoken to her for months. I just assumed that this was done. I didn't know, you know, it just it overwhelmed me. It got too much. I didn't sort it out. And the police, they let him off. You know, any kind of situation like that, generally, if you don't have MOT insurance, you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
And I normally don't have a lot of nice things to say about the police, but in this instance, I'm really grateful for that guy. His experience, a bit of compassion, definitely, and especially over something about paperwork. I feel like that's an element of ADHD that's often almost, oh, well, you're just not disciplined enough. You're just lazy. Well, and it's not the case.
2 years running, I drove around without my MOT sorted for, and not as in for 2 whole years, as in, twice I went over the MOT thing, and it was like the first time I'd done it ever in my driving career, and I was like, oh my God, couldn't believe it. And then to do it again, the guy was really like taking the mickey. He was like, you need to get and I was like, but I know, usually I've got it written in my diary, but and again, my diary is my absolute lifesaver, because
another hack, parents of students, planners, calendars, great. Timekeeping, a digital version and a written version. Do it. Or use them all. I know that they're not going to be kept up with. I know that this is easier said than done. Yeah. But if you can actually stick to that and actually use them, perfect.
If I hadn't have got into the habit of using a diary about 8 years ago, then I would not. This whole tutoring business and everything that's come from it would not have existed. But I was so lucky to have a mentor. 2 mentors, one that was very creative, one that was very organised. The creative one taught me to go with the flow, and the organised one taught me to plan everything to the yin yang. Yeah, and both of them prepared me so well, because I do not naturally organise, but he was like on me.
You do not make a plan without your diary being there. She will not confirm, yes, it'll be there. Until it's in the diary's there, and she can check and confirm.
And put it in the diary, else otherwise. Because I'm in that habit now. If once it's in the diary, I could not stress about it. The diary,
it doesn't matter if it disappears up here. But to be honest, it's going to. That bit of homework that you're like, I'll do that when I get home, and you just shove it in your bag, doesn't exist after that moment. Yeah. You have to literally go, right, put that in the folder, set an alarm for when I get home or whatever time to do that. Because I set a task, do that, and stick to it.
I write ahead in my diary as well. So say if I've got to cancel a subscription, I'll flick 3 weeks ahead and I'll cancel that subscription, flick another week ahead, cancel subscription, flick, and I'll like make notes.
Know yourself. Know that you're not that disciplined if that's how you are. So combat that.
A really cute little cool thing that I read once was someone in their diary, what she did to keep her mind sharp was, say, like, from today, I know that you're wearing this red top. I'd write in my diary in 3 weeks' time. So she always went bang on 3 weeks ahead. And she'd write the answers on the day and questions 3 weeks ahead.
Wow.
So she'd write what colour was Steph's top on the podcast. So that when in 3 weeks' time...
That's insane.
And it was to keep... She was an older lady, so it was keeping her mind sharp. Like, could she recall these memories? Could she, like...
You know what? There was one of my favourite... I can't remember if it was Judge Rinder or Judge Judy now. It'd be amazing if it was Judge Judy. But there was an episode of one of them where the guy, that the defendant or whatever, gets away with it because this woman diaries everything.
Oh, right.
To what they ate that day, to the mood of her husband, to every receipt that she's bought. Like, it's so meticulous. And any lie, I'm pretty sure it's Judge Judy. If you're not remembering it, then it's probably not.
Well, I've not
It
seen
needs to be Judge Rinder, because he's literally, every time he's like, well, did that happen? She's like, well, no. And he doesn't need to.
Yeah.
She's got it written down. He was like, why would she have written this lie 9 months ago?
Yeah, that's the thing. She wouldn't have planned.
She was like, I can see it's in the same pen. It's in the same. It was just. It was. I remember being like, this is amazing. Write everything down.
Well, the other thing.
And then I continued to not write anything.
The other thing with writing it down though is because I keep all sorts of random journals in like all sorts of random places. So then when I find them, I always write a new entry in it, and then I'll reflect on it and stuff. And there was the other day I found one because I've obviously been moving house and stuff, and I was like, just randomly open it on a thing and see what you're doing. So I randomly opened it, and it said, "Woohoo! In 2 weeks, me and Mum moved to Glenfield," and I just moved out of that house 7 years later, and I was like, how weird is that? Like,
I weird.
But it always seems to happen like that, where I'll revisit these diaries. And I'll revisit on a day that something really similar is happening. But if I hadn't have made those memories, I wouldn't know those reflections, and I really like it for that reason. I even found a note I'd written myself in January at the start of this year. It was like new tattoos, and I'd listed the ones that I wanted: birdcage, gavel, and the teepees.
Oh, you know what? We need to make an episode where we make predictions. People normally do it on YouTube at the start of the year, where we say the things that you want to do or the things that you think will happen. We could do 2 separate lists, and then a year's time we revisit it. How many of those things were accomplished? How many of those things actually happened?
Yeah.
We almost have our own bingo cards.
That is so funny. Like, let's try and pull a Simpsons. I'll be like, right, in 4 years' time, society will have collapsed, and Lindsay will be living in a... Not really. I won't.
Yeah, we know it has collapsed.
I won't make it.
We're not Atlantis or whatever. Just do you not like that reference?
Yeah.
Magician of the Gods, whatever it's called.
Yeah, Chariot of the Gods.
I'm getting brownie points for knowing Graham Hancock stuff.
Indeed. He's in America at the moment. So, Graham, if you're listening, we want you on the podcast.
Do you think Graham's listening?
Yeah,
hey, Graham.
maybe.
I would love to meet you.
He was it was very polite and very kind, but also very
Oh, I love that.
doing great work for the world. He is. Right, well, is that
that's our life done.
Yeah, back to school. We've probably made everyone feel so much worse about returning. Like, it's horrible, it's a shit show.
Just enjoy it, just have fun. It's post-COVID at times now. It's going to be hard if you're going through those years where you weren't getting the support due to COVID, teachers' strikes, to the Omicron, all the different variants that last year there was loads of kids and old people that were ill. It's been hard, it's been tough, and it's not getting easier anytime soon. So do not let your mental health suffer just to trying to seem like you're intelligent to a school's standards.
Yeah.
Be happy, be healthy.
Yeah, stick together and love each other, and that goes for all the students as well. Stop picking on each other over bloody trainers and things.
Yeah, find your higher self. You don't need to be judging other kids for what they have or what
we
they
all
don't
know
have.
that the bullies are the ones that feel that way. We know that. So I see you, bully, and I know
if you feel like you are being bullied, just turn around and say, I think that says way more about you
than it does about
me.
Yeah. That saying,
and then just pretend you're dropping a mic. Yeah, they'll probably laugh at that, but you'd be like,
no, don't do it. But how somebody feels about you says everything about them. That's what you have to remember. And it is really hard, but
don't get dragged in.
For you bullies out there, like I say, your time's up. Like, we see you. It's sad. It's a sad act, and we need to stop it.
Are we beating them up?
But we don't lower ourselves to that level.
No, we don't.
We enlighten.
Yeah.
I'll give you my life. Well, to be honest, let's get in the boxing ring. I like boxing.
I don't want to get hit.
You just want to whack them.
Just want to beat kids
whack
up.
the butt.
No, I don't. Worst
Anyway.
soundbite ever.
I know, like, and on that note,
This is Lindsay.
and this is Steph.
I'm Human Design, and this is a different podcast. We will see you next week.
We will. Good night. Mwah.
Why is it like this? Instead of hate, it should be love, we inviting. You don't agree, then you're the problem, now we're fighting. Open up your mind, stand up, become righteous. Why is it like this? Instead of